Project. Hello, welcome everyone. Welcome to this information session about the Advancing Equity in Local News grant opportunity from Colorado Media Project. I'm Melissa Davis. I'm the director of the Colorado Media Project, and I'm joined by Sam Moody, who is the Learning and Grants Manager. A little bit about CMP. Sam, do you mind sharing your screen? And are you going to drive the? Okay, awesome. Thank you. So a little bit, if we can advance a little bit, this is us. Hello and welcome everyone. If you don't mind putting your name and introducing yourselves in the chat, you know, we're gonna move pretty quickly, but we would love to just let everyone know who's in the room and introduce each other. So I'm Melissa, this is Sam, and we're gonna be here to tell you about this third round of Advancing Equity and Local News grant funding. And next slide. So a little bit about the Colorado Media Project. We've been around for just over 5 years, and in a very dynamic media ecosystem. 3 things that we do are we provide funding. We're a pooled fund at the Rose Community Foundation, and we pool funding from local and national, state level and national funders, and offer strategic grants and open opportunity grants like this one to spur innovation, impact, equity, and inclusion, and resilience in Colorado's local news and information ecosystem. We also work as a catalyst, convening cross-sector conversations and connections, and really thinking about the long-term health and sustainability of the information ecosystem here in Colorado. And we also work as an advocate. We really focus on providing a platform for sharing, commissioning and sharing research, sharing learning, and leveraging our collective influence to bring more allies and resources and better public policies into the movement to strengthen and reimagine local news. Next slide. Yeah, here's just some of our grantees and partners that we've supported. Over 80% of the funding that comes in through the Media Project. Some of it goes to the activities we just mentioned, but most of it goes directly back out the door to grants to our partners and to newsrooms to support work in the ecosystem. And also just want to acknowledge that advancing equity in local news is a lofty goal that is a long-term commitment for the Colorado Media Project. We did our first grant making in this area in 2020 with the Informed Communities grant right at the beginning of COVID to make sure that newsrooms that were reaching non-English speakers and rural communities and other places that had information gaps about COVID were reaching important updated local news. In 2021, we had a vaccine equity grant that made sure that for newsrooms that came up with projects to ensure that there was accurate, up-to-date information on vaccine access and safety, and that people were getting their answers to their questions from trusted community members. And in 2022, we announced over nearly $1 million in grants that we gave out in 2022. It was the first round of Advancing Equity in Local News grants, which we're going to go into in a minute. And we also started supporting doing multi-year grants to 6 newsrooms and collaboratives to sustain service to underserved communities over 3 years. And this is our second round. We're in our second year of supporting Advancing Equity, and currently we have 27 projects supported with over $350,000 in funding went out for this year's for the projects that we're supporting this year. And many of you are on the call right now, so we're going to hear in just a few minutes from a few of the 2023 grantees to talk about what they've learned so far and what their impact is in the community. Also just want to acknowledge that none of this could be possible without pooled funding from these funders. Colorado Health provides unrestricted funding for all of our priorities, as does Democracy Fund and Rose Community Foundation. This year, this is the third year that the Colorado Trust has contributed funding to support DEI training in Colorado newsrooms. And this year, myself at Gates Family Foundation, we're prioritizing projects that engage diverse communities in engaged elections projects, which we'll talk about a little bit more in a few minutes. And Root Ed is a new funder, and we have someone here from Root Ed who's going to talk a little bit more about the priority about incorporating opportunities to incorporate youth voice into local news coverage. And just a minute, can you click the next little thing where the bottom thing, there's text, yeah, there you go. So the objectives of the Advancing Equity in Local News opportunity were really shaped by a really deep initiative that we supported from 2020 to 2022, Voices Initiative working groups who were groups of journalists and community members of color met over time to really think about how local news coverage could represent more of our community and really respect all community members, and that and make sure that we had diverse people, experts, voices, community members being reflected in local news coverage, and that the interests were represented in the topics and being covered. So these 4 resources, I would say, for all of you that are thinking about making applications, each of these working groups came up with recommendations for how things could be better. And we really encourage you to look at those recommendations and when you're thinking about proposals.
Well, if you're just joining and you have any background noise, would you mind muting yourself? Thank you.
Yeah, I think we can mute them. We can force mute them too. So thank you all. So the Advancing Equity in Local News priorities are really set by community members and journalists of color. And so we just encourage you to look at these reports and their recommendations to really guide your thinking about, and there's lots of really great examples in our state and also elsewhere that are peppered throughout these reports. So we encourage you to take a look at them. And with that, I think we're going to hand it over, and maybe you can put the screen down so we can see faces better, Sam.
Yes, I would love to do that. Stop
Awesome.
my share.
And we'll call, oh, go ahead. I was just going to say, we'll call on if Erica is available to just say a few words about kind of what your 2023 focus has been. It's just to give us a few examples from our current grantees. So thanks for sharing, Erica.
Yeah, no, thank you for the opportunity. So I'm Erica Meltzer. I'm the bureau chief with Chalkbeat Colorado. We cover education issues. And my colleague, Caroline Bauman, is also on the call. She's our deputy managing editor for engagement. And this has been work that we've done between our editorial side and our engagement team. Our focus has been bringing more education, news, and information to Spanish-speaking parents. And so we've had a dedicated newsletter and been doing translation work for a while. We did sort of focus group work, not unlike the folks up in the Roaring Fork Valley, where we sought out information. We interviewed parents about what they needed and then incorporated that into a strategic plan. And so we've done a number of things. We've sort of changed up some of the types of stories we're doing with more resource guides and news you can use, because we heard a real need for kind of actionable information. We're experimenting with different ways of reaching our audience, such as direct mail. We're doing more in-person tabling. We've hired a contract community outreach specialist to help us with that work, who has a lot of extensive experience with reaching Latino communities and Spanish-speaking communities. We translated and printed election materials that we distributed through community partners. And we are experimenting with like a promotora program, sort of asking trusted people in the community to share our work within their own networks. And so those are some of the things that we're doing to try and better serve that audience.
Awesome, incredible, inspirational. So we're so excited to have you doing all that work, and glad that we can have an opportunity that fits so well with all the things you're doing. So Sam, who's I think we have Kara from Kodo FM radio.
Yep.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for this opportunity. My name's Kara, and I'm the executive director at Kodo Radio in Telluride. We applied for funding to hire and to sustain our Spanish language news reporting position. One of the big things that that we took away from 2020 was that we were not serving all members of our community. And so we took DEI training, and one of the takeaways from that was, if you mean it, put it in your budget. So we budgeted in 2022 to hire a Spanish language news reporter, and we held with funding from the Colorado Media Project, held a Latinx open house in June to coincide with Immigrant Heritage Month. It was at that event, which I highly recommend, it was so great, that we recruited Luis Tavares, and he started as our Spanish language news reporter in the fall of 22. And he developed a local news program in Spanish called Noticias that airs every Monday night. And I can tell you, a year later, we applied for funding again, and he has really just taken ownership of this segment, and he has calls every week. He hosts public affairs programming in Spanish every Tuesday evening, and has just really served as a bridge to our local Latinx and immigrant communities. He also organized this year's Immigrant Latinx open house at Kodo in June, which was awesome. And he just recently did 2 Spanish language DJ trainings. So we're diversifying voices over our airwaves, and we have at least 3 new DJs from these trainings. And he is just really getting his stride here at Kodo, and we're so grateful for the funding to be able to do this. So thank you. Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, great. And sorry, go ahead, Sam.
And then we have Dave Rosenthal with Mountain West News Bureau.
Okay, yeah, thanks. Hi, everybody. Nice to see you all. Our project flowed out of the Voices report from CoLab that was pictured on one of the earlier slides. We, as part of that project, we participated through one of our partner stations, KSUT, which is operated by the Southern Ute Tribe in the Four Corners area. We worked with them on some community engagement to see what some of the issues were in media coverage of tribal communities. And not surprisingly, there were lots of shortcomings, including, a shortage of Native journalists, coverage that relied too much on stereotypes, and simple coverage without diving deep into the community. So we used our grant, which was really helpful, to help train non-Native journalists in how to better cover tribal communities. We did 3 trainings virtually, and we had, I think, 75 journalists involved in that. And then 1 in-person training just a week ago with another group of journalists up in Fort Collins. Excuse me. And the idea was to teach them how to better cover these tribal communities. And they were all led by Indigenous journalists, all the trainings. So we wanted to put it in the hands of those journalists who know best, what should be done. And then the other part of the training involves our staff. We're turning over some of our stories to Indigenous editors to work with our staff. So rather than me editing the stories, I just turn it over to these others, and they, again, work with our reporters to get a sense of what did they, did the training stick with them, and are they unintentionally, maybe putting some harmful stereotypes in their stories, or doing other, picking stories that aren't really relevant to tribal communities. So that's also helpful. We did one story, we're working on another story right now with that. So the money was, to us, very helpful, allowed us to do something that we hadn't done. And it allowed us also to, part of it is we want to solidify our partnerships with 2 Native journalism organizations, the Native Public Media and National Native News. We supply stories to them on a regular basis, and we want to, again, make sure that our coverage is responsive to the needs of the community. So it was very helpful in all those ways.
All right, thank you so much. 3 great examples of the kinds of projects that this grant supports. Don't worry, your logo does not have to be teal or green to be eligible, in spite of the consistency we're seeing up here. So I'm going to take us through, I'll give a little overview of what the next 20 minutes of this info session are going to be like. I'm going to walk us through the focus areas, the priorities for this funding, a little bit of detail on the sorts of things you should be prioritizing to generate a successful competitive proposal. I'll walk you through the application process, dates, timelines. I will be dropping a couple of links in the chat, starting with this one. Please copy this link down. This is our grant information page. It has the application link. It'll have this slide deck and a recording of this info session. This is your best place to find or reference any information about the grant opportunity. And at the end, it should take me about 20 minutes to go through that. We'll hold another 20 minutes at the end for your live questions. If you have any questions midstream, please put them in the chat. Melissa will keep an eye on those. If we see anything that needs to be addressed immediately, we'll switch over to that. Otherwise, we'll use those questions to start the Q&A session at the end. Sound good? All right. So advancing equity in local news. We expect to have about $250,000 to be available for this 3rd round of grants in 2024. These are for projects that run between January 2024 and December 2024. The typical grant amount ranges from $5,000 to $25,000. There may be an opportunity for exceptions to that upper limit for projects that involve many well-coordinated partners and have the potential to offer significant impact broadly across a community or communities across the state. But those will all be at our selection committee's discretion. So I do highly encourage you to pay attention to that $5,000 to $25,000 range for most projects. There's how we advance. We have 3 major objectives for this grant opportunity. Your project should address at least one of them. It certainly can address multiple. These objectives are to support internal efforts to strengthen diversity, equity, and inclusion within Colorado newsrooms. That looks like, and I'll go into details on what all of these might look like. To strengthen connections and build trust between Colorado newsrooms and the diverse communities they serve, and to support more diverse and inclusive civic news leadership, entrepreneurship, ownership, and narratives. So we'll go through each of these one by one and provide a couple of examples. Priority 1, supporting internal DEI work for newsrooms. Project examples can include DEI trainings for newsroom leaders and reporters, content audit initiatives, or projects to examine trends in sourcing, framing, or language. We heard a couple of examples of that just a few minutes ago. Leadership development for journalists of color or those representing diverse perspectives or abilities, and plenty more. Within this priority, we do have some funding specially allocated from the Colorado Trust to directly support DEI capacity buildings within newsrooms. That's that training, bringing in consultants, source audits, leadership development, etc. Somebody in, let's go. Second priority is strengthening connections and building trust between Colorado newsrooms and the diverse communities they serve. Examples of what these kinds of projects can look like: engaged elections projects that center community priorities. If anyone is participating in the Harkin Engaged Elections Fellowship, this is a great opportunity to secure funding to build on those projects if you're going to be continuing them. Community engagement or reporting projects co-designed by newsrooms and community groups. Public accountability boards or other community entities that provide ongoing and actionable community feedback to your newsroom. Systemic approaches to connect newsrooms with expert sources, storytellers, and collaborators from diverse communities, and more. A thing I'll flag here is this grant is very appropriate for carrying forward work that is already in process. It's also very well designed for, and projects would be competitive that are looking to start one of these. And if what that looks like is starting a conversation with your community to determine what their needs might be before deciding what the best solution is going to be. We highly encourage you to submit proposals for projects that start with that conversation and listening before determining what the best solution is. I would like to highlight that we have this year some special funding allocated from Root Ed Denver to support projects that seek to expand the role of diverse youth and family voices and perspectives in local news coverage. And I haven't kept track of our attendance. Do we have anyone from Root Ed here to speak a little bit to that perspective?
Yep, this is Erin Kobler. I'm the communications manager at Root Ed. We're super excited to be part of this project. I'll just expand a little bit on what's already here, just to clarify a bit more. So Root Ed is a nonprofit based here in Denver, and we are committed to supporting educational equity in Denver and increased access to high quality schools for every child in our community. Through this funding, we're really looking to provide support for newsrooms in strategic planning for the increased use of more diverse messengers in their storytelling. So our hope is that by intentionally amplifying the voices of historically underrepresented groups, we can help ensure a more inclusive and representative narrative will be shared in the media. We see so many positive and inspirational stories unfolding in our local schools and in the surrounding neighborhoods every single day through our work with community partners. So our intention is really that more media attention can be given to the achievements happening, particularly in our low-income neighborhoods and through the eyes of those who are part of that work being done every day and having the lived experience of being part of those communities. So I'm happy to answer any questions along the way and just really thrilled to be part of this.
Thank you so much for your support, Erin. We also have special funding allocated from the Gates Family Foundation to support newsrooms looking to strengthen their 2024 elections coverage via engagement with underrepresented Colorado communities. Melissa, is there any additional detail you'd like to share about that?
Yeah, thanks, Sam. And now I'm putting on my Gates Family Foundation hat. But this is a project, Sam mentioned we, through Gates, I supported this. I'm going to drop it in the chat here. A few links. There are 13 newsrooms right now.
You're really low, Melissa. I don't know if you get closer to the microphone.
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me better now? Okay. Thank you, Martine. This year, there are 13 newsrooms in the state going through this Harkin Fellowship on engaged elections. And so I wanted to put some funding in this opportunity for newsrooms that are seeking to continue putting some of these new skills into practice in the 2024 elections coverage. A lot of them are kind of testing things out this election cycle under the with support from Harkin and I'm sorry. So anyway, if you have projects related to that, or if you've done some engaged elections coverage or planning for your newsroom, I dropped a few things in the chat. One is just more about the fellowship and the newsrooms that are in the fellowship. The second one is just some background from Harkin about audience engagement and how that relates to DEI. And then also Harkin is a great resource for ideas and training. If you haven't been through any of their training, just about how to incorporate community voice into your elections coverage. And so just love to see any proposals in that vein. If you're a member of the cohort, one of the things I think you'll be doing in this month's cohort meeting is just talking about if there's collaborative efforts that the newsrooms are interested as well. And so if there's a joint proposal that you guys come up with, this could be an opportunity to just get some at least preliminary funding for that work.
Thank you so much for that. Oh, go ahead.
What else I was going to say? Oh yeah, and I just wanted to also say just a word about how we make decisions. Sam is going to go into a little bit of this, but like, the funders that put into this fund make decisions collectively, and so we just kind of on the backside there is not everything has to fit into these funding priorities and whatnot. This is just like a portion of the fund. So there's plenty of support for any type of projects that you all want to do. We really but some funders have specific things that they're interested in supporting, and so you'll know that these are types of projects that specific funders are interested in, but it's not to limit you.
Yes, thank you. That's an important clarification. For our third priority, supporting more diverse and inclusive civic news leadership, entrepreneurship, ownership, and narratives. Project examples include capacity building that develops media leadership, entrepreneurship, storytelling or reporting skills among journalists, content creators, and residents of color, low-income residents, those from rural or other underserved communities. This is a very broad category, and funding for all sorts of capacity building, training, support would be eligible here. Support for media ownership transitions, innovations or growth that significantly impact communities of color, rural or other underserved communities. Editorial projects led by and for those whose stories are not being told, and much more. So if there are new project ideas you have that directly serve and engage diverse communities, or especially if you are a newsroom that like primarily or directly serves one of those communities, or is led or owned by members of those communities, your work would be quite eligible under this priority. We'll talk a little bit now about the kinds of entities and organizations and newsrooms that are eligible for funding. Colorado nonprofit news organizations and small locally owned and operated for-profit or public benefit newsrooms are qualified to apply as lead applicants. So, newsrooms not owned by hedge funds from out of state, locally owned newsrooms producing local news, serving local communities, all eligible to apply as lead applicants. For-profit newsrooms owned by corporations or investors, out of state nationally, may access project support. You'll just need to apply in partnership with a local organization, a local newsroom or community organization that would be the lead applicant. We highly encourage collaborative applications and newsrooms and community organizations working together to figure out how to solve, identify and solve problems their communities are facing. And so certainly encourage everyone who would be interested in working on such a project to join in that way. Like I said, nonprofit community organizations that are not newsrooms but are planning to collaborate with one or more local eligible Colorado newsrooms are also encouraged to apply. If you are a freelance journalist, a storyteller.
Hold on, Sam.
Oh, yes.
On that one, I just want to clarify though too. We would require, if you're a nonprofit that's not a media organization and you don't have, an amplification mechanism of your own, really, we would require that there's, formal partnership between yourself and a media organization, because there's lots of other grant opportunities for just general nonprofit organizations, and this one is specifically, trying to address the local news ecosystem.
Yes, thank you. That's important. We can support projects from individuals, freelancers, storytellers, media entrepreneurs, but we would require that you apply with a fiscal sponsor, whether that's a nonprofit or for-profit newsroom or community organization that would be supporting your work, and again, providing that vehicle for amplification publication if there are news production elements of the project. Applicants must be located in Colorado, and or projects must primarily serve Colorado communities. We have worked with a couple of entities that serve the Rocky Mountain region. I think Dave's Mountain West News Bureau is a good example of that. But we do projects have to primarily serve Colorado residents in order to be eligible. We are focused on our local communities here. If you were a current or a previous CMP grantee, whether from the Advancing Equity rounds of the past or other grant programs, you are eligible to apply. You can apply for continued funding to continue supporting a project that was funded previously, or you can apply for funding for a totally new project, depending on where your priorities and your community's needs are. We do just ask that if you have been a previous grantee to explain in your application whether you're applying for the continuation of an old project and how you're building on that, or whether you're applying for a new project, and then just let us know if this new project relates to any previous funding. A few more bits of fine print. When it comes to budgeting, please base the amount requested on the scope of the project. While all applications need to be strong to be competitive, the larger the amount requested, the stronger your application will have to be. We have that $5,000 to $25,000 range of normal grants. We've had applicants apply for $60,000 or $70,000, and we love to hear about those projects. Those projects are almost always beyond the scope of this particular fund to support. So just keep that in mind, and I highly encourage you to reach out to me individually as you're drafting your proposal and thinking about the right amount to ask. I'm happy to talk through that and help you, dial in the right amount to ask for while you're drafting your proposal, rather than coming back to you and saying, we love your proposal, but it's asking for way too much for this fund. Let's figure out how to scale it down after the fact.
And I would also just add on that, one of the things that we recognize is this isn't enough funding to do most projects. And so that's why in the budget, we ask what other sources of funds will support the project, and that really relates to, the organizational commitment, the partnership in kind, other funders that are interested in similar things. And so that's also, we just want to recognize this is not going to be the only source of funds for most projects.
Yes. And that's an important point on as you're designing your project budget. We ask that you submit a budget that describes the complete costs of the project, not how you're going to use the money that you're asking CMP for. So the project budget should show this grant, the Advancing Equity grant from Colorado Media Project, as a portion of the total costs. Other things that should be included in there is, if your organization is allocating any of your own internal revenue streams to support this, if you're allocating, projects don't happen without people. If some of your staff are going to be working on this project, make sure you document that their staff time is a part of the budget. That helps us, get a clearer sense of what it costs for a newsroom or a community organization to do this kind of work. And just gives us a sense of what you are able to, what other resources you're able to leverage in order to make these projects happen. Again, we highly encourage proposals that involve multiple outlets or community groups, with the goal of creating efficiencies, leveraging strengths, and expanding our impact beyond, creating more impact next year than what we could do last year by working together. And throughout this, grantees will be invited to participate in additional learning and capacity building, facilitated by myself at the Colorado Media Project and with our partners at the Colorado News Collaborative. And we'll certainly highlight opportunities for you to share your progress and your learnings with each other and with other newsrooms across the state at convenings and other gatherings and opportunities. I will highlight that what that capacity building looks like is TBD, because we really want to tailor it to what you need. So when we have our cohort finalized, we'll have a grantee kickoff meeting in, I believe it's late January. We'll look at the timeline. And that's going to be one of our first opportunities to like get together and think through any, shared needs we have that we might be able to provide capacity building for the whole cohort or for a subset of you that have a shared need identified. So nitty gritty on the application process. You will be applying via the grants portal for the Rose Community Foundation. They're our fiscal sponsor. They have a fantastic team of grants managers that manage the technical side of that portal and help us process all of your applications. The application link is here and on our webpage. I'll send all of you this slide deck and recording, so you'll have all these links. I do want to highlight, if you are not yet a current member of the Colorado Press Association and or CoLab, you must apply for membership by Monday, November 27th. That's the application deadline. It's a very simple process. I'll include instructions on how to do that for anyone who isn't on a follow-up email and on our website. Brief overview of our application. It includes a short round of questions about your newsroom's current audience, revenue, and staffing levels. This information is really critical to help us gain like a baseline understanding of who our cohort is and to track the impact of this project year over year. All of which in the funder world is essential for us getting money next year to continue funding these things, is our ability to report on what the impact of that funding was out in the world. So I deeply appreciate all of you taking the time to help us with that data collection. As we're reviewing your applications, here's so the top things we're going to be paying attention to in terms of our selection priorities. We're going to look at the quality of the project plan, a plan that exhibits clear objectives, a realistic time frame, strong buy-in from leadership and partners, is properly scaled and sustainable for the organization, that clearly identifies what's going to be done, who's going to do it, and when it's going to happen. All of those are qualities of a really strong competitive application. We look at the potential impact of funding. We look for projects that are going to have a strong impact within your organization or the community you serve if they are well executed. And where the grant funding is really going to make a difference in terms of your ability to execute. We really look for projects that have a potential for learning. Over the last several years, we've been able to collectively, as an ecosystem in Colorado, learn a lot about like best practices for building relationships between newsrooms and communities, advancing equity and strengthening newsrooms. And we don't have all the answers yet. So projects that will continue to help us learn more about what it takes for newsrooms and communities to build better relationships and advance equity are really important. So being able to articulate questions that you think your project is going to help you or your community answer is a really strong trait of a strong application. And finally, we look for organizational uniqueness and fit for the grant opportunity. Who the applicant is, what role you play in the ecosystem, what communities you serve, who your organization is run by, owned by, staffed by. All of these things are important considerations, especially when we are discussing the role of news media in an equitable society and information ecosystem. In a state in the country where we know that news media has not equitably represented our communities for its entire history. We'll talk through our timeline just so we all have the same dates in our minds. You'll have through Monday, November 27th to prepare your proposals. Reach out to me and Melissa with any questions and submit them via the Rose Community Foundation portal. The deadline is November 27th, 5 p.m. Mountain Time. That lets us get through our review process and make our decisions with our review committee and return notifications, our grant making decisions to applicants by Friday, January 5th. Then in the middle of January, if your application is approved, you'll receive a link to sign a grant contract. Those will be due by January 15th. We'll then have a virtual grantee welcome meeting for that our cohort of 2024 grantees on Thursday, January 18th. During that time, we have a project planning worksheet that is a little more practical, detailed sheet for you to fill out regarding the what the tasks required to complete your project will be, who's going to do them, and when you think they'll be done by. Our grantees have found this to be a really tremendously powerful planning tool for transitioning from writing a proposal where, in grant writing, you're writing a proposal for something that may be happening if you get funding. And once the funding is confirmed, we find it really useful to work together to define that, okay, here's the funding we have, here's what we're going to do, transitioning from, getting the award to getting the work started. So we'll share those in advance of the welcome meeting. You'll have an opportunity to ask any questions about those and workshop them with your cohort peers. And we ask that those are submitted by January 30th, along and pending the receipt of that project worksheet. Your grant will be dispersed by January 30th. So that's when money will be. Yes, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I'd love to just say a word about that because it might sound overly complicated, but it's not meant to be. One of the things that we know about our grantees at the Colorado Media Project is sometimes these are the first philanthropic grants. We do give a lot of philanthropic grants to small locally owned for-profit newsrooms, and we do that purposefully and trying to introduce the processes of grant making and kind of what it takes when you receive a grant from a philanthropic institution, and really just being aware that there are expectations for the funding. Like you said, there's reporting requirements, there's things that have to be kind of followed up on. And so we're trying to give a little bit extra support than maybe other grant makers might give, just so that we can kind of introduce you to the process of philanthropic grant making just very intentionally. So Sam is and I have both been doing this type of work for dozens of years between the two of us, and so we're here to answer any questions you may have there.
Yes, thank you. We found this to be a really good tool for setting everyone up for success. Next on our timeline. Oh, sorry, let me jump back here. Is one of those practical things we use those worksheets for. We host mid-year check-ins with all of our grantees in June. That looks like a quick half-hour Zoom call with me that we'll schedule those in May. They'll be held in June. It's certainly not the only time we'll be interacting. Anytime you have any questions or updates, feel free to reach out to me. But we make sure we have a dedicated check-in with all of our grantees in June to hear how the project's going. Hear what you've learned, hear what you've achieved, hear if you're encountering any challenges or roadblocks and help you work through those. And we use those worksheets and that sort of project planning timeline to check in on, 6 months later, are we where we thought we'd be back in January, or have things changed? And that helps us, it helps me stay up to speed on your projects and makes me a much more useful support for you. We find it really helps our grantees in terms of knowing what to expect to check in on and report on in June, and what they would want to plan for in the second half of the year for their grant project. We'll have opportunities to convene our grantees and have you share those lessons with each other. We're not exactly sure when they're going to be in 2024. We're still working on the details of that, but we'll certainly have more information early next year. And then these grants run through the end of the year, so your final report will be due to via the Rose Community Foundation portal by December 1st, and all funds need to be expended on your project by December 31st. Like I said, you can always reach out to me at any time during the application process, during the grant period. I love answering questions, helping make the sometimes complicated world of philanthropic grant making transparent and accessible to all of you. So any questions about the grant projects, proposals, questions as you're drafting, please reach out to me. If you need any technical assistance accessing the Rose Community Foundation portal, logging in, navigating any of that, Kelly Costello is the Rose Community Foundation's grant manager. He is a fantastic and accessible supporter of anybody dealing with any technical issues. So you can always reach out to me on those things as well, but I recommend you copy Kelly because he is ultimately the one who's going to be fixing those things for you. We'll pause here for some questions. I know we've been seeing some things get answered and asked and answered in the chat. Melissa, is there anything you'd want to lift up from the chat, and or does anyone else have a question they'd like to share verbally?
Yeah, I'll give you one that came up that we answered. And Sam, can you minimize the screen share so we can see each other? Thank you. So there was a question in the chat about just eligibility of who can actually apply. And just to be clear, it's really intended for newsrooms primarily. So we require so that we don't have to go make decisions about who is a newsroom and who's not. As a proxy, we use membership in, you should be a member of Colorado Press Association, Colorado Broadcasters Association. Sam, we got to remember to make sure that is updated on all our collateral. CBA membership is also a proxy, or CoLab partnership. Those are all industry-based organizations that have their own criteria for like ethics and all the things that, what does it mean to be a local news professional organization. So you should either be a member or a partner of one of those three organizations, or you can be a community-based organization, can be a lead applicant if you have a formal partnership with one or more of the newsrooms that are members of what we just mentioned. So I know that's a little confusing, but like as an example, I think we gave a grant last year to, I believe, the Aurora branch NAACP, and they had a project where they were doing a student voice project in partnership with a number of different newsrooms, and so they applied as a partnership. So. Any other questions that we can take? That was the only one that I saw in the chat. Yeah.
Vicky, I see a hand up. Oh, Vicky, I think you're still muted.
I have a couple ideas of projects that we'd like to put in front of you. Can we do that all in one grant proposal, or do we have to do multiple grant proposals? My preference obviously is to do it once, but you know, we could take this in several directions, and so I was just wondering about that.
Oh, that's an excellent question. So the way the proposal, the application is set up, you are going to have to submit one application per project idea, because the application asks for like project specific responses and like a budget that explains how the funds will be used to achieve the goals of that project. But I don't recommend that you just fill out 3 or 4 different applications. I recommend you schedule a quick call with me and let's talk through those options that you have that you're thinking about. And I can give you some feedback like right from the start as to which ones sound like they're best aligned and which ones sound like you've got the most planning done on. And you may still end up wanting to submit multiple applications, and that's fine. But please make use of me and my time ahead of time, and let's have that conversation and talk them through so that you can make a little bit better use of your time.
Okay, thanks.
Yes.
Yeah, and that goes for anyone, on the call. Both Sam and I are pretty accessible. And so if you want to workshop something and just kind of talk about it with us, we encourage you to just reach out and schedule, 15 minutes, half hour even. Will help you strengthen your proposal. These are pretty competitive, I will say. I mean, we end up being able to support, I'd say, the majority, like the last few years, based on, we've supported most of them at some level. I mean, there have been some that fell outside of the bounds, but you're going to take quite a bit of time to apply, so it is good to kind of vet it with us in advance. So, other questions?
Don't see any other hands going up.
Hi, I
Oh,
have a
Diana,
question.
yes.
Sorry. I don't know if you responded this. I had to leave briefly, but can we propose projects that are already going on that are just to support the project? Or does it have to be a new addition to the project?
I think just ongoing things that are going on already are eligible. I mean, there's no,
Yes.
we've supported things year over year. So yeah, I mean, I think that's fine.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think you would, in your application, want to, as I was talking through those sort of the priorities we'll look at, you'd want to make sure to explain what the impact of the funding would be. The difference between sustaining a project that is just ongoing work versus sustaining a project that is, year over year generating new impact and change and benefit to your newsroom or community. Being able to explain what the next year of this project is going to mean for your newsroom and community would be very important. Yes.
Yeah, and for ongoing projects, I would say, yeah, just being able to even talk about the track record and kind of why it needs to continue, and the importance is, to Sam's point, kind of the big thing.
Just a few minutes left. Any last questions?
Okay, well, we'll give you back 5 minutes of your afternoon then.
Yeah.
It was great to see many familiar faces, and if you come up with any questions you want to ask us individually, I'm going to put we'll put our emails in the chat here.
There we go.
There we
you
go.
can always find my email, both of our emails on that website as well. We'll send you this recording, this slide deck, all the information you need, and a follow-up email. And look forward to hearing you. Please do reach out. Even if it's just a quick 5-minute call to be like, hey, this is what I'm thinking about. Does this sound good? And we say, yeah, that sounds like a great green light. Always happy to take time to have those conversations, even if they're that quick.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Take care, everyone, and thank you.
Bye.